Larry Bird, the basketball genius, almost never made it to the NBA. In fact, he used to be a garbage man. This is the incredible story of how luck, a persistent coach, and his own unwavering determination transformed a trash collector into an NBA legend. We'll explore his journey to becoming a complete player, an elite shooter, an underrated defender, and one of the greatest rebounders at his position, all while being one of the best trash talkers in NBA history. As Pat Riley once famously said, if he had to choose a player to take a shot to save his life, he'd pick Larry Bird. Larry Bird's story begins in 1956. Born in West Baden, Indiana, a small farming town next to French Lick with a population of only about 2,000 people. He was the fourth of 6 children, growing up in a poor family where his father, Joe, worked in construction and his mother, Georgia, worked in a diner. Joe's construction job wasn't stable, and his struggles with alcoholism made it even harder for the Birds to make ends meet. They lived in a small house, and in the cold winters, their old furnace would often break down, leaving the family to freeze. Due to these financial difficulties, Larry was often sent to live with his grandmother in French Lick. Poverty weighed heavily on Larry, and he always cited it as his biggest motivator in life, saying, "As growing up, you don't realize that you don't have anything because you never had it in the first place. You know, making some money and looking back, I remember all of it, and I don't want to be like that again." His saving grace, however, was playing sports. Sports was a big part of our lives every day. There was never a day we didn't do something, whether it was baseball, basketball, or football, he recalled. His older brothers were quite good basketball players, and they were the reason Larry picked up the sport. This competitiveness on the court often benefits younger brothers who grow up chasing older siblings, as they play up and gain an advantage when competing against kids their own age. A pivotal moment came when Larry was around 13 years old, standing 6 feet tall and weighing 130 pounds. His father promised him $20 if he made the freshman basketball team in high school. To Larry, $20 at that time was probably worth $1 million to him now, maybe even more. So he practiced relentlessly. To his amazement, Larry realized he loved playing basketball more than anything else in the world. He played when he was cold, when his body ached, and when he was so tired he didn't know why he kept going. "I guess I always wanted to make the most out of it," he reflected. Larry did make the freshman team, though initially as a bench warmer, only playing in garbage time minutes. As a sophomore, he missed most of the year with an ankle injury, but it was during this time that he received perhaps the most significant life lesson from his father. Larry was about 13 or 14 when his father came home with an ankle that was all black and blue and red. He and his brother had to help their dad just to get his boot off. He was in awful pain. Yet, the next morning, they helped him get his boot back on, and he went to work. That image made a lasting impression on Larry. We don't know if he broke it or he just hurt it, but couldn't get his boot on. We had to help him get his boot on, go to work, so to me it'd been very easy to just say heck with it, but he knew he had to go. 20 years later, many fans marveled at Larry's ability to play through all types of injuries, a resilience that stemmed directly from seeing his father go to work, despite barely being able to walk. Even while nursing his own ankle injury, and still on crutches, Larry was in the driveway every day, hitting 200 shots before school. Once his foot healed toward the end of his sophomore year, the coach unexpectedly put him in a game, and all his practice finally paid off. "My confidence came from me shooting basketball by myself for hours upon hours. I didn't pick up a ball on a Saturday and decide I was going to score 40 a game. That preparation came way before that." After that pivotal game where Larry's practice paid off, he started listening to and applying everything his coach taught him about basketball fundamentals. Larry began practicing these skills with an almost obsessive dedication. When he returned, for his junior season, Bird had grown to 6'3", and he had refined his dribbling skills and developed a real knack for passing. Larry understood that his senior teammate Steve Land would handle most of the scoring, and he felt he could best help his team by being a passer. He absolutely fell in love with the feeling he got every time he made a pass that led to a bucket. However, his coach noticed that Bird was only trying to dish the ball and threatened to glue him to the bench if he didn't start shooting more. Larry listened. and he ended up becoming the second leading scorer on the team, averaging 16 points and 9 assists per game. At that point, Bird was a good high school player, but not yet a great one, especially since his junior season was the first year he consistently played organized basketball, so nobody could have even imagined what would happen in Larry's senior year, when Bird transformed from a solid player into an absolute monster. A huge part of this transformation was his physical growth. Over the summer, Larry sprouted 4 inches, and at 6'7" he was now the tallest guy on the team, but he was also the best shooter, passer, and ball handler. Bird had also started weightlifting, coming into his senior season at 185 pounds, a remarkable 40 pounds up from his junior year. In his first game of the season, Larry dominated with 27 points, 21 rebounds, and 7 assists. In just the third game of the season, he broke the school's single-game scoring record, knocking down 4 three-pointers in a loss. But after that game, Larry had an epiphany, realizing he could score anytime he wanted to. Later that year, Larry dropped 55 points with 24 rebounds and 5 assists against Corydon, and in the last home game of the regular season, Bird collected an astounding 54 points, 38 rebounds, and 8 assists. And impressively, all of this was achieved without a three-point shot rule in high school basketball at the time. For the season, Larry averaged an incredible 31 points, 21 rebounds, and 4 assists per game, after which he accepted a scholarship to play for the famous Indiana Hoosiers under the great Bobby Knight. However, after just 4 weeks at Indiana University, Bird was miserable. He didn't have any money, he missed his family, and he felt alienated and overwhelmed by the huge crowds. "Financially, I couldn't stay, okay? I just couldn't do it," he explained. So, Larry returned home to French Lick, where he enrolled at a local community college. But he soon gave up on that too. And then he became a garbage man in French Lick. Surprisingly, he was happier than ever. "I loved that job. It was outdoors. You were around your friends, picking up brush, cleaning up. I felt like I was really accomplishing something," Bird said. "How many times are you riding around your town and you say to yourself, why don't they fix that? Why don't they clean the streets up? And here I had the chance to do that. I had the chance to make my community look better." Even though he was living a peaceful life tossing garbage bags and fixing benches in the park, Larry's family life soon turned into a disaster. In 1975, when Bird was only 18 years old, his father committed suicide, and Larry was devastated. Chose the way he wanted to die, and he did it, and it's just unfortunately that some people have problems like that, but, you know, I wish he was here, but he's not, so I had to go on with my life and try to make the most of my life just like the rest of my family has, and that's the way we dealt with it, he shared. Joe Bird had been divorced from Larry's mother at that point, with his PTSD and alcoholism being the main reasons for their separation. Alimony payments and debts to creditors were mounting, and it was getting harder for Joe to find work. He came to the tragic conclusion that his family would be better served through life insurance money. Joe then called his ex-wife, told her she didn't need to worry about the debts anymore, and then he hung up and took his own life. Growing up, Larry was best friends with his father. The two spent a lot of time together, and his death affected Larry deeply. Although he felt betrayed by his father's act, Larry once again respected his father's sacrifice for his loved ones, and that's the same attitude he always brought to the basketball court. During that period when he worked as a garbage man, Larry married a girl he'd known for years, but that marriage turned out to be a catastrophe. And just when they got divorced, he found out that his now ex-wife was pregnant, and she prohibited Larry from having anything to do with the baby. So, between 1975 and 1976, a still teenage Larry Bird quit 2 colleges, lost his dad, and suffered through a messy divorce. Who knows how his life would have turned out if he hadn't been recruited by Bill Hodges, then the assistant coach at Indiana State University. The young coach knew how good Bird was, and the two of them formed a relationship through Hodges' relentless attempts to get Larry to play ball again. However, Larry was reluctant due to his failure at Indiana University, his job as a garbage man, and his complicated family situation. But Hodges was relentless, and one day he went to see Bird at his mother's house. Larry kept talking about a buddy of his who could really play ball, but nobody knew about him because he never went to college. To which Hodges replied, "Yeah, Larry, they're gonna say that about you someday." After that mic drop, Hodges just got up and left without even saying goodbye. And 2 days later, he got a call from Larry, who had decided to join Indiana State, which would change his life forever. If Bill Hodges hadn't been as persistent as he had been, Larry Bird might never have existed in any of our minds. I believe that with all my heart. In his first season for the Sycamores, Larry, who now stood at an imposing 6'9", immediately proved he was a basketball genius, averaging a remarkable 33 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block in 28 games. He brushed off critics who claimed his dominance was due to playing at a smaller school, stating, "Once I started playing, it's the same old thing, you know. He's at a small school and he ain't playing against anybody, which is fine, still dominated." During his second season at Indiana State, Bird continued to impress, averaging 30 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists, earning him a consensus first-team All-American selection. Larry fully intended to return to Indiana State for his senior season. The NBA rules at the time dictated that players had to spend 4 years in college to be eligible for the NBA draft. So, in 1978, nobody in the NBA was really thinking about Larry Bird, except for Red Auerbach, the general manager of the Boston Celtics. Auerbach didn't believe he could find a superstar in the 1978 draft, and he was convinced that Bird would be the first pick in '79, making him unattainable for the Celtics. However, because Bird had technically enrolled at Indiana University in 1974 but dropped out only a few weeks into his first semester, he was, by a technicality, eligible for the 1978 draft. Still, drafting him was incredibly risky because Larry could re-enter the draft after his senior season at Indiana State. But Auerbach was willing to gamble. With the 6th pick in the 1978 draft, the Celtics picked Bird, a move that sent shockwaves through the rest of the NBA. Larry himself acknowledged the risk. "I just think that Red took a gamble because he had the 6th and 8th pick that year. He wanted me. And why didn't he wait to the 8th pick? You know, why did he take me the 6th pick?" What happened in the 1979 NCAA season was perhaps even more shocking. Bird led the Sycamores to an undefeated season, making it all the way to the national championship against Michigan State and their star guard Magic Johnson. Indiana State won 33 games in a row, leading up to the finals. Bird was particularly inspired in the Final Four against the second-seeded DePaul, finishing the game with 35 points, 16 rebounds, and 9 assists, shooting an incredible 16 for 19 from the field. However, in the national championship game, he ran into a better team. Michigan State was much more athletic, and they kept trapping Bird, forcing him to take tough shots. Magic and Michigan State ultimately won the title, beating Indiana State 75-64, with Larry hitting just 7 of 21 shots for 19 points. Due to the immense hype created by Bird and Magic, the 1979 NCAA Finals game achieved the highest ever television rating for a college basketball game, and with 35 million viewers, that record still stands today. However, after the college season ended, Bird still had a big decision to make, whether to stay with the Celtics or re-enter the draft. He first visited Boston on April 6, 1979, where he, Red Auerbach, and Larry's agent discussed Bird's contract. They finally settled on a $650,000 a year deal, which made Bird the highest-paid rookie ever. But Bird felt no pressure from the monumental sum. "If I fail, I fail. I failed classes before. I know the feeling." When the season started, Larry did the furthest thing from failing. The Celtics went from a dismal 29-53 record in 1979 to an astounding 61-21 in 1980, boasting the best record in the NBA. Bird quickly found his footing, saying, "I think it took me probably 3 days after rookie camp. I found out this league is nothing I can play in this league, and I will dominate this league." With averages of 21.3 points, 10.4 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and 1.7 steals per game for the season, Larry was selected to the All-Star team, made the All-NBA first team, finished fourth in MVP voting, and won Rookie of the Year over Magic Johnson. However, in the Eastern Conference Finals, Julius Erving's 76ers proved to be too tough, spoiling what could have been a championship meeting between Bird and Magic. Then, in the 1981 season, it was Magic who failed to reach the finals against Bird. With the addition of Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, who arrived in a trade dubbed the Steal of the Century, the Celtics assembled arguably the greatest front court in NBA history. Bird recalled, "The one thing that we did my second year, we picked up Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale. Now we didn't know how they was going to fit in, but they fit in very nicely." Boston won 62 games in the regular season, and Bird finished runner-up for the MVP behind Dr. J. In the playoffs, the Celtics swept Chicago, then avenged their loss to the Sixers in one of the most thrilling series ever, with 5 of 7 games decided on the final possession. After winning Game 7 by a single point, Boston faced the Houston Rockets in the NBA Finals. Bird didn't have a great shooting series, hitting just 42% of his shots and averaging 15 points per game, but he also averaged 15 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals, winning his first NBA championship in just his second season in the league. Cedric Maxwell was named the Finals MVP because he averaged more points than Larry, but there was no doubt who was the best player on the Celtics. After that 1981 championship, Bird felt, "I feel like we had a good enough team where we could start a destiny and win a lot of championships." In the next 2 years, Bird's numbers continued to rise, and he finished second in MVP voting in both seasons. In 1983, he was even third in voting for Defensive Player of the Year, despite his reputation as a slow-footed, unathletic player. But even with stellar play from Bird and the ascension of Kevin McHale, the Celtics regressed, losing to the Sixers in the 1982 Conference Finals and getting swept by Milwaukee in 1983. With a bitter taste of disappointment after that loss, coach Bill Fitch resigned and was replaced by Casey Jones, an 8-time champion as a player from the Bill Russell era. With the new coach, the addition of a great shooter in Danny Ainge, and stellar defense from veteran point guard Dennis Johnson, the Celtics were on the rise in 1984. Bird averaged career highs in scoring and assists with 24.2 points and 6.6 dimes per game, along with 10 rebounds. Larry also led the league in free throw percentage. He made the all-defense second team, and after finishing second in MVP voting for 3 consecutive years, Bird was finally named the league MVP. In the playoffs, Bird was playing the best basketball of his career, shooting over 50% in every playoff series, seamlessly dropping 30-point games and double-digit assists. After they got past Washington and New York, the Celtics dropped the Bucks in 5 games to avenge the loss from the previous season and make another NBA Finals against Bird's oldest foe, Magic Johnson. Playing against Magic, Bird said, "Yeah, that was something that I always dreamed about since he beat us in college." In a hard-fought series, it took 7 games to decide a winner, and in the final game of the season, both teams struggled with their shot, including Larry and Magic. Bird recalled, "I can remember we didn't shoot the ball extremely well, but we played hard, we got all the loose balls, we did the things that was necessary for us to win." But the Celtics were more poised down the stretch, winning 111-102 to secure another championship parade in Boston. With 27 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals per game, Bird was named the Finals MVP. In the following season, Bird was again named league MVP, and the Celtics faced the Lakers in the finals once more, but this time it was Magic and the Lakers who came out on top, with Kareem winning the Finals MVP. For the 1986 season, the Celtics traded Cedric Maxwell for Bill Walton, a former MVP center who was struggling to stay healthy. But the gamble paid off, and Walton shined in his role as a 6th man as the Celtics played one of the best seasons in franchise history. They finished with 67 wins and 15 losses, and including the playoffs, they lost just 1 game in the Boston Garden, going 51 at home. For the season, Larry was at his absolute basketball peak, averaging 26 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists, with 2 steals and near 50-40-90 shooting. During a long regular season, Larry would often get bored and had to find extra challenges to motivate himself. Before a game against Portland in February, Bird surprised his teammates and journalists by saying that he would play the whole game with his left hand. And despite barely touching the ball with his right, Larry finished with 47 points, 14 rebounds, and 11 assists, including a game-tying shot in regulation and a game winner in overtime. He explained, "If I remember the game correct, they were forced me left to help and they wasn't getting there quick enough so I had shots around 5-6 foot with my left hand. I felt more calm my left hand there. I did my right then. Once I got started making a few, I just kept going." It was one of the greatest games of his career, on par with his career-high 60 points from the 1985 season against Atlanta. Larry was hitting jumpers left and right from impossible angles, getting into such a zone that the Hawks bench even jumped out of their chairs and cheered for him, which got them fined by their coach. "The announcer let me know every time I scored, so you go 48, 50, 52, and when it got to that with like 3 or 4 minutes to go, I thought might as well go ahead and try to get 60, and that's what I did." Then, in 1986, Bird received 73 out of 78 first-place votes for the MVP award, becoming just the third player to win MVP 3 years in a row. Only 2 other players won the regular season MVP award 3 consecutive times as Bird did: Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. In the 1986 playoffs, the Celtics steamrolled through the East, sweeping Jordan and the Bulls, defeating Dominique and the Hawks in 5, and then swept the Bucks to reach their 3rd straight NBA Finals. This time they faced the Houston Rockets, and while the Houston Twin Towers of Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon provided a bigger challenge for the Celtics, there was nobody who could stop Larry. With 24 points, 9.7 rebounds, and 9.5 assists, Larry was 2 rebounds and 3 assists shy of averaging a triple-double in the finals, winning another Finals MVP as the Celtics won the title in 6 games. In 1987, Bird became the first player to shoot 50-40-90 for the season, averaging 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists per game. But while Larry was still on top, the Celtics regressed. Before the season, their number 2 overall pick, Len Bias, tragically passed away after the draft, and they suffered many injuries during the season and the playoffs. Bird noted, "I was the healthiest one on the roster. That's not saying much. I felt pretty good. I know Robert had ankle injuries and Kevin broke his foot. Danny had a hip problem, and just to get to the finals made us feel good. Still, they had Larry, who pushed the Celtics to their 4th consecutive finals after one of the most legendary moments of his career, when he stole the ball from Isaiah Thomas in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals." Bird described it as, "In slow motion, it was like the ball goes up in the air. I didn't even see him." And in the finals, once again, it was Boston versus LA for the 3rd time in 4 years. But this time the Lakers were healthier and better rested, and the Celtics didn't have enough gas in the tank to stop the fast-paced showtime. Bird delivered another 24 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists for the series, but it wasn't good enough as Magic got the best of him once again. The next year, Bird had the best statistical season of his career. He averaged 30 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists, again shooting 50-40-90 for the season, proving that he was the best shooter who ever played at the time. Unfortunately for Larry and the Celtics, they lost in the conference finals against Detroit, and the 1988 season proved to be the last hurrah for the Celtics' Big Three of Bird, McHale, and Parrish in terms of contending for a title. Bird missed almost the entire 1989 season due to a persisting back injury and multiple surgeries to remove bone spurs from his ankles. He originally injured his back in the 1985 offseason after deciding to build the driveway of his mother's home himself. Larry decides to do it himself. This is Larry Bird, the superstar out there, breaking his back literally shoveling gravel, it was remarked. He spent all day shoveling gravel and ended up hurting his back, causing his spine to get misaligned. He had lost the structural stability in his spine, so it would slip into abnormal positions to try and lock itself to get artificial stability. That's like getting your fingers stuck in the door and somebody's still pushing on the door. Bird was a millionaire and could have easily paid someone else to do it, but Larry enjoyed manual labor and he wanted to help his mother with his own hands. Paying people for something he could do himself simply wasn't Larry's style. "I really don't need anyone to build my ego when I'm home in Boston. I want to go out and eat, pay my bill, and get the hell out. Back in French Lick, I don't have those problems, and that's why I go back there. It's the same with nice cars, Mercedes and all that. I can't see putting $50,000 or $60,000 into a car when our house growing up was worth $10,000. I just can't buy that, and clothes never did catch my eye. I never really enjoyed him. I always wore what I felt comfortable in. I'll wear pretty much anything if I get it for free. Because of his back injury, Larry probably should have retired in '88. But that memory of when he was 14 years old and his father went to work with a foot that was 50 shades of purple stuck with him, and Larry kept playing through the pain. But to me, I'm just so glad I got to the NBA and made it. I didn't want some little injury messing up my whole season, so I tried to play through a lot of them. From 1988 onward, Bird had to have his spine realigned before games, just to be able to participate. The injury was so severe that he often had to lie down for hours at a time, either between games or sometimes even during games, spending up to 4 hours a day stretching. And even though he could barely walk, Larry still averaged 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists in the last 3 seasons of his career. They called him Larry the Legend because of his dominance on the court, the extreme confidence he exuded, and the trash talking he served on a daily basis. He famously walked into the locker room during the three-point shooting contest and asked other participants, "Which one of you is going to come in second?" Everybody's looking at me. I go, "Who's coming in second?" And nobody said a word. I thought, maybe they thought I was joking, but maybe they thought I was serious, but well, then I had to go out and win it. Truthfully, I meant it. I knew I was probably going to win the contest. He then defeated them without ever taking off his jacket. Legendary. He would tell players that he was going to get the ball, how many dribbles he was going to take, and then do exactly that, sinking a jumper in their face. Legendary. Every time he was about to make a move, he told him what he was going to do. 1 dribble pull-up going left off glass. And did you know Bird played the entirety of his career with a dislocated finger? His right index finger got badly hurt during his last season at Indiana State. But like always, Larry just pulled the finger, put it back in place, and kept playing through the pain. Bird had to slightly change his shooting stroke because of that finger. And he swears he was a better shooter in college than in the NBA. And the numbers support this theory, as he shot 53% in college compared to 49.6% in the pros. Despite his reputation for being a trash-talking jerk, as well as getting into a few fights on and off the court, people who truly knew Larry would tell you that he was an even better person than he was a player. When the Celtics won the title in 1984, Bird approached Red Auerbach and said, "I'd like to buy a championship ring for Walter, an old equipment manager and sometime trainer who died in 1985. "No other player ever thought of that," Auerbach said. And in a 1985 game against the Utah Jazz, when he was just 1 steal away from recording a quadruple-double, something that only Nate Thurmond had achieved up to that point, Larry instead chose to stay on the bench, saying that he already did enough damage. Getting a quadruple-double meant nothing to me. Really, you go into a game and end up when you're up by 25, 30 points just for a steal? No, makes no sense to me. I done enough damage already. And that's the perfect example of the duality of Larry Bird. On one hand, he was an uber-confident SOB that would destroy your soul on the court. But he was also a modest country boy who used to pick up garbage in French Lick and felt it was immoral to buy a Mercedes. Well, like I said, when I grew up, I never went away from French Lick, so this is all I really knew. It's not that I think this is the greatest town in the world, but it's my hometown. This is where my family and friends are, so it's important to me. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the incredible life of Larry Bird. If you did, please like this video, leave a comment below sharing your favorite Larry Bird moment, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of sports legends.